Money Talk.
This is Akashvani. In the program Money Talk, now we bring you a discussion on India's resilient growth amid global challenges. The participants are Deepshikha Sikarwar, Economic Analyst, and Rajesh, Laikh, Anchor.
In a world marked by economic uncertainty, policy shifts and rapid global change, India's trajectory offers both lessons and inspiration. Towards this end, today at the Semicon India 2025, Prime Minister spoke about how India is shining today while there are concerns in the world economies.
इस साल के पहले क्वार्टर के जीडीपी नंबर आए हैं। एक बार फिर भारत ने हर उम्मीद, हर अपेक्षा, हर आकलन से भी बेहतर प्रदर्शन किया है। एक तरफ जब दुनिया भर की इकोनॉमीज में चिंताएं हैं, आर्थिक स्वार्थ से पैदा हुई चुनौतियां हैं, उस माहौल में भारत ने 7.8% की ग्रोथ हासिल करके दिखाई है और ये ग्रोथ हर सेक्टर में है। मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, सर्विसेज, एग्रीकल्चर, कंस्ट्रक्शन, हर तरफ उत्साह नजर आ रहा है। भारत आज जितनी तेजी से ग्रो कर रहा है, इससे हम सभी में, इंडस्ट्री में, हर देशवासी में नई ऊर्जा का संचार हो रहा है। ग्रोथ की यही दिशा है तो भारत को थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बनाने की तरफ तेजी से बढ़ना पक्का हो चुका है।
Our aim today is to go beyond headlines and statistics and gain a deeper understanding of the key drivers, challenges and opportunities shaping India's economic resilience. It is a pleasure to welcome Deepshikha Sikarwar. Deepshikha, thank you for joining us and we look forward to engaging and enlightening conversation with you. In your view, Deepshikha, why has the term resilience become so central to conversations around India's economy over the past month, 2 months or a year?
So if you actually see what's happening around the world and has been happening over past 3-4 years, if you go back to like COVID years, entire world economy was, it was hurt badly. It was badly bruised by COVID impact. And how various economies struggled to get back on track. And it's been after COVID, there was Russia-Ukraine. After that, there was crisis in the Middle East. And India, import-dependent country, especially for crude, plays a huge impact on its economy. So we had our own struggle, but despite, a very negative a global economic climate, India has stood out. Agencies like IMF, World Bank, they have also acknowledged, called India a bright spot. So all these factors which have sort of come about, hit us, we've emerged out of it, or we are struggling. We've emerged so successful and we are standing out. Whereas, if you look at what's happening to other economies. Look at Chinese economy. Look at US was also struggling for a while now. Of course, there's been some growth which they have seen. But India has been that resilience come out of all these negative impacts that were hitting us and to shine bright. I think that is why India is seen as a bright spot.
So you mentioned a lot of global turbulences that the world went through. In all this, how would you summarize India's economic performance?
There's not been 2 months or 3 months which have gone past when you've not heard of, some situation developing somewhere. We had a huge COVID impact. After that, economy, industry, a lot of factors which contribute to the economic growth, they were impacted. After that, you had Ukraine, Russia, so the oil was hit. Then you had crisis in the Middle East. Export sector felt some hit because of that. But we have continued. Indian economy has sort of developed this kind of a shield and governments worked towards that, creating the environment to ensure that the local economy functions very well. So if you see when COVID happened, government pumped in money, capex expenditure was increased because private sector wasn't coming in, so government had to come in, and that support has continued because private sector investment still, it's a trickle. It's not a big flow. So that support is continuously there, not just in terms of funding, but also in terms of policy measures. You had various packages, you had various interventions. So, and now we are seeing, amid all this geopolitical uncertainty about tariffs being imposed by the United States, it's trying to shield its domestic economy. We have the GST Council meeting tomorrow. The centre has already moved a proposal to move to it's a major reform in GST, which will have large implication for the economy, businesses, and the government's talking about more reforms.
So let's deep dive into the key macroeconomics or structural factors which has enabled India's continued growth over many major economies which are facing headwinds currently. So what are the macroeconomic or structural factors that we have currently which are in our favor?
See, one of the key factors which sort of keeps us insulated is we are not very export dependent. Our economy is essentially a very large domestically oriented economy. It is a kind of a shield which is there if there's a major turmoil in the global export market, and which we've seen what has happened recently. Apart from that, if you see, there's been constant emphasis of the government in terms of the macro indicators, whether it is fiscal deficit, inflation, whether it is current account deficit. There has been endeavor to ensure that in terms of the macroeconomic factors, we are not wanting. There is no faltering there, and that has helped overall. Apart from, if you see, there has been policy measures, there have been interventions, there have been support measures, there have been reforms to ensure ease of doing business, focus, multiple measures which are being undertaken to spur the local economy, to strengthen it further.
That's why there is a call for Swadeshi also. Prime Minister time and again.
Absolutely. But
by Indian.
Absolutely. And I think this whole focus on the local, and Prime Minister also said vocal for local. But I think that also stems from this concern around over-dependence. During COVID, we had Atmanirbhar focus, and before that we had Make in India. So this emphasis has been going on to reduce reliance, dependence on other supply sources. We saw, over-dependence, it's just cost the auto industry so much, where sort of we ran dry of rare earth magnets because it was coming from one single source. And to ensure that we become part of these supply chains at some levels, and we have local manufacturing in the country.
Deepshikha, what is important, how India takes things head on. Okay, there is a problem, like 50% tariff. We seek opportunity in that. We take things head on. We have opened, or rather we have started talking to 40 countries to look for opportunities of exports. What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. And I think after the 50% tariffs were announced, I think there was a realization that we have to use this as an opportunity to engage with the world, to not just shield the export sector, but also the hit that we would be taking in economic terms. We should be able to sort of stand firm. We should be able to reinvigorate our economy, and the steps that are needed, the reforms that are needed, we should use this as an opportunity. As the government has been emphasized, crisis should be an opportunity to undertake measures that will help the country achieve its goal of Viksit Bharat, or 2047 being a developed nation.
We have noticed that how FIIs, of course, they're business-minded, and how they're leaving the country or taking their investments out. But the domestic investors have stood by the country and the economy, and they speak volumes about how they can shield India and its interests.
If you remember, a few days back, FIIs pulling out of the market have such a negative impact on the markets. And it was then we would debate and discuss as to why, domestic investors are not coming into the market. But domestic investors have come in and they are there as a pillar. And FIIs will keep moving money. They will invest, they will come, they will make their returns, they will shift their money, they will churn their portfolios. So it is going to be a volatile portfolio, and I think the domestic investors are definitely betting on the India story.
Yeah. I would like to have your comment on the significance of MSMEs, startups and the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives in promoting self-sufficiency and economic diversification.
We had a major conflict in our neighborhood and there was a lot of use of drones. Now, a lot of the drones that were used in the conflict were made in India. Few years back, no one would have thought that we would have that capability. So there's been a lot of focus on nurturing smaller entities. There have been a lot of policy interventions. There have been credit support for MSMEs, Startup India program. So a lot of measures have been taken to nurture this particular sector.
So how effective, according to you, it has been, you mentioned it also, have been India's monetary and fiscal policies in countering a recent global shock?
I mentioned earlier, the government has ensured that there is no macroeconomic shock. We have seen that happen in the past when fiscal deficit would go out of hand. But management of macroeconomic issues have been, I think this government deserves due credit there. Fiscal deficit has never been allowed to go haywire. We did face an issue during COVID, but it has been directionally, the trajectory, it has been brought back. And we've seen the rating agency has upgraded us. The impact is definitely there. RBI has moved in tandem with the other central banks globally while keeping the domestic factors in view. So when inflation was a concern, they acted. When the inflation has eased, they have acted. So I think everybody is focused on ensuring that macro policies move in the right direction.
So you mentioned about us not very export-driven economy.
Yeah.
What should be done so that we maintain this momentum and to keep the consumers going as well, increase the consumption amongst the consumers?
The big ticket GST Council is meeting.
Yes.
There's been, Centre has proposed doing away with the 12% slab. Large number of items are being moved to 5% slab. That's a huge tax reduction. And that's being done to ensure that there is demand boost. It encourages consumption once companies pass on these tax reductions in terms of lower prices. Even in the highest bracket, 28%, air conditioners, dishwashers, number of consumer durables, they would now be at 18%. So huge boost for this sector ahead of the festive season. So I think from the government side, there's been a consistent effort to ensure that the local demand, local consumption gets encouragement. And in terms of the export diversification, there has been a lot of emphasis on diversification of export basket in terms of countries and products and so on and so forth. And some time back, we involved our missions as well, find out newer markets for our export products. So I think those efforts are on and hopefully they will take time while we overcome this shock, but they will yield results.
Thank you, Deepshikha, for sharing your thoughtful insights on India's path to resilient growth in today's dynamic global economic environment. Thank you for being with Akashvani.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India's resilient growth amid global challenges. The participants were Deepshikha Sikarwar, Economic Analyst, and Rajesh Laikh, Anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 928-909-4044.
Money Talk